This is Sarah, and I just want to take a moment to speak to you about this week's sponsor, Favor. Favor Inc. is a statewide family-led nonprofit 501c3 organization that is committed to empowering families as advocates and partners in improving educational and health outcomes for our children. Favor is the Connecticut state organization of the Federation of Families for Children's Mental Health. Favor offers a single place for families with children who have medical, mental, emotional, and behavioral health challenges to find information, assistance, and training. To find out more about Favor, please go to favor-ct.org. We are grateful for our opportunity to work with Favor as a sponsor, and now on to the rest of the episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Caregiver Chronicles. My name is Sarah, and today I'm here with Annie McDonnell. She is a grief counselor, an acupuncturist, a sound healer, and today she's here to talk about acupuncture. Her name may sound familiar because she is a repeat guest. We aired an episode featuring Annie about a month ago, and she's back to share more to talk about acupuncture. Hello, Annie, and how are you today?
Good. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you, and welcome back. We're really excited and really happy to have you back. Do you mind further introducing yourself to my audience again?
Sure. So I'm a licensed acupuncturist. I'm based in New York State, although I do some virtual sessions because Chinese medicine includes a bunch of things besides acupuncture, which we can talk about. I have some additional training in various types of sound healing and incorporate those into along with acupuncture. And then I've also done some training in kind of grief counseling. So emotional health is a big focus of mine.
Thank you so much for that introduction. And that's interesting that you mentioned acupuncture virtual. I'm going to have to ask questions about that later. But first, I want you to explain to my audience what exactly acupuncture is and how it works.
Okay, acupuncture has been around for thousands of years. It was developed in China, but it's pretty common throughout Asia, and it's been increasingly common in Europe and the United States over the past few decades. There are a lot of different ways that it works, so it's hard to explain, like a short summary, but basically it uses very thin. They're like as thin as a human hair, so they're really, really thin. A lot of people who are afraid of needles worry about acupuncture, but it's really nothing like the needles that you're used to getting with a shot at the doctors. So they're tiny little needles. They're single use, so they're sterile packed, and then they're used for one person only and then immediately discarded. And they're placed at different acupuncture points around the body that kind of prompt the body to remember how to kick into certain healing mechanisms. It can stimulate the immune system in a healthy way. It can release neurochemicals that help with pain. It can also release neurochemicals that improve your mood. So it's very good for anxiety. It can help a little bit with depression too. Really help. It was developed as a full medical system. So it integrates really nicely with Western medicine because Western medicine is great for emergencies and acute systems and like when you need an antibiotic. But where Western medicine kind of gets a little more hung up is with chronic disease, where they'll just kind of prescribe medication and then prescribe another medication to deal with the side effects and then another medication to deal with the side effects of that. And it's just kind of like an endless cycle, it seems. But with Chinese medicine and acupuncture, it's great for chronic conditions because it helps to work from within to kind of rebuild your own inner resources. And also, a primary way it works is tapping into the nervous system. So pretty much everyone spends so much of their time in fight or flight and just really stressed out and nervous system on high alert all the time. And one of the ways acupuncture works so well is that it signals to the nervous system that it's safe to relax, and you kind of fall naturally into what's called the parasympathetic state. That's rest and digest. And so once you're in that state, then your digestion's better, your sleep is better, your body can start to send out the healing chemicals to really start the healing process. So it's a very slow, gentle medicine that's very, very good for chronic conditions, especially.
Thank you. And I just want to reiterate, though, that it's not a replacement for Western medicine.
Mm-hmm.
It's, if you, it's not going to replace an antibiotic. It's not going to
Mm-hmm.
replace, it's not going to cure your broken arm or
Mm-hmm.
Alzheimer's. It's just, it's in addition to your traditional treatments. It's a very great complementary system. And I just want to reiterate that because there's a lot of Eastern Western medicine like back and forth, and I think that when we integrate both together we tend to get the best results. When we
Oh,
integrate natural modalities with Western medicine, that's when we get the best results.
mm-hmm.
um
Yeah, it's a really good marriage. They're really good partners with each other. It's unfortunate that Western doctors either don't know much about acupuncture or have their own kind of prejudices against it. And on the flip side too, people in the natural health world can have biases against Western medicine, but they work really well together, and everyone deserves to have like the full range of resources available to them.
I agree with that 100%. And thank you for reiterating that. So how did you get into acupuncture?
It was a long, a long, winding journey. One of the things that prompted me, and this kind of relates back to our grief conversation too. I was, I had a cat who was dying of cancer at a too young an age, and I learned how to do hospice care for her to give her the best quality of life as long as possible. And so when I was doing that, I was giving her injections and fluids and trying to sneak in as many like holistic supplements as I could. And I surprised myself that, you know, I had thought about being a doctor when I was growing up, but like med school didn't seem for me, and the Western model didn't seem like a good fit for me. But doing this, I was like, oh, my vet was very encouraging, and he said, you're you're doing a good job. Like it's no easy thing to give a cat an injection, let alone like a human being. So, and the experience itself of caretaking was so rewarding emotionally that even, I mean, yourself as a parent that it's so grueling and can be so exhausting, but it's so fulfilling um, to be connected to someone in that way and taking care of them on like a really deep level. So that kind of sparked something in me of like, well, maybe I could find something that wasn't being a doctor and going back to med school, but was in the healthcare field, and that would allow me to help people in some way. And so from there, I just started kind of like trying out different things, taking different classes. I grew up interested in natural medicine because my parents were older and I was always nagging them to like stay healthy. So I was the annoying daughter who was like, eat this healthy thing or take this healthy supplement to, live as long as possible. So I'd already done I already had like a lot of education in kind of holistic medicine, but the direct experience of taking care of my cat made me think maybe I could do something hands-on. So I ended up taking a months long program in Western herbal medicine to learn ways you can, use kind of herbal medicine on yourself on a day-to-day basis, like making teas and making ointments and things like that. And I loved it. But what I noticed was a few of the guest teachers in the program came from the field of Chinese medicine, because that's unfortunately what happened in the West is the West has a great tradition of natural medicine, but it was kind of broken a few hundred years ago because, you know, what we know of Western medicine took over. They wanted to get rid of like the local herbalist or, you know, the midwife with, you know, kind of like folk healing skills. Some of them, unfortunately, were like accused of witchcraft and that whole like long history. So what's come down through Western European tradition is kind of disjointed and broken up, but China has the benefit of this thousands year tradition where it's continuous and there's this huge body of literature. And they have a very elaborate system of herbal medicine that's more similar to like Western pharmaceuticals because they're a little stronger and there can be up to like 15 herbs combined in a formula for someone. It gets very complicated. So anyway, we got these teachers explaining herbalism from a Chinese perspective and the complicated nuances of how you can combine one herb that's great for this, but might have this side effect with this other herb that's, you know, very moistening if something's too drying or, so it's just very interesting. And they were talking about kind of like the way Chinese medicine diagnoses people in terms of like reading symptoms and interpreting them. So I got very interested in it and started exploring a little more. And to my surprise, I also found that acupuncture is actually, in a way, a lot safer than herbal medicine because with herbs, even the safest herbs, you know, someone could have an allergy to something. You know, it's like with foods, you never know what you might get a reaction to. And if you're creating an elaborate herbal formula, you know, the chances of interactions or side effects or interactions with Western medications that someone's taking, it can get very tricky. And they're also herbs can take longer to work than pharmaceuticals. So you have to have people who are patient enough to kind of, you know, invest in like taking the tea every day or taking the herbs. So I realized like from a practical standpoint, acupuncture is super powerful because you can see results, not necessarily instantaneously, but you know, within a few sessions, you can turn things around. And even within one session, people often notice a difference in terms of pain relief or feeling more relaxed. So it's has powerful effects, but there are almost no side effects. The most common side effect that might happen is a little bruise where a needle went in because there might have been a capillary beneath the surface that wasn't visible. And even that doesn't really happen that often. It depends from person to person. Some people are more prone to bruising, but it's very, very safe. So that kind of piqued my interest in like, well, you know, I hadn't really thought of that before, but maybe acupuncture would be a great way to combine all the things that I've already learned because, you know, as I said, Chinese medicine includes a bunch of different things like nutritional counseling, some lifestyle coaching, and some herbal medicine, and some breathing exercises. And so it really struck me as like a great way to help people and fold in all these different lifestyle tips that could help people feel better.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And how long does the course take to become an acupuncturist?
It's a minimum of three years full time. And in some states, it's like California, you're required to get trained in herbal medicine as well. So that's another full year. So if you go to an acupuncturist, you'll know that they've gone to school for 3 to 4 years, and there are national certification exams. There are also a set number of hours that before you can graduate, you have to treat a certain number of people with a certain number of hours. It's like hundreds of hours in the clinic working with people, kind of like like a medical residency before you graduate and then take the certification exam.
Thank you so much for that. So when you go to an acupuncturist, you know that they've gone through a significant amount of training. It's not like they just like saw it on TV and said, "Oh, here we go." Not like you can't just make up a certification for this or license for this. There's a whole process in state licensure and things like
Mhm.
that.
Yeah. Although I will give one kind of warning about that because it is trickier nowadays because there's something called dry needling that some people might have heard about. I would be very cautious of going to someone for what they call dry needling because it's basically acupuncture, but it's done by physical therapists who have done just a weekend of training. And they sell people that, I have this great new technique, and that's not well regulated. And that could just be a weekend or two. And that technique, dry needling, they call it dry needling because in Western medicine, if you're getting an injection with fluid in it, like a shot, that would be like a wet needle. And a dry needle is like an acupuncture needle. So, anyway, they've kind of physical therapists and some chiropractors do it as well. They've kind of snuck in under the system in some states. In some states, it's illegal for them to do it, but in some states, they can do it. And it's a very aggressive type of acupuncture because it's needling kind of into muscle knots to release the knot. Sometimes they're called trigger points as well, and that I've heard bad stories about because again it's just a weekend or so and it's a very aggressive technique. So I would tell people to be a little cautious and buyer beware when someone who's not a licensed acupuncturist tells them they're going to do dry needling or a similar technique.
Yeah, so make sure you're seeing a licensed acupuncturist, not a dry needler.
Mm-hmm.
And also just don't stick needles in your own body unless you
Yes,
have,
yes, please don't.
unless you, or into anyone else, unless you are a licensed acupuncturist.
Yeah.
No, that's great advice. That's
Yeah, it's
that's advice to
it's
live
very
by.
yeah, it's very confusing too because there are all these like you'll see on Instagram too. There sometimes you'll see like athletes with needles from like head to toe, and that's not that's not really a traditional technique. It's like a super aggressive form and done by people who don't have like the more holistic perspective of what's appropriate. So, but it can be very misleading because you'll see these marketing campaigns of like dry needling is better than acupuncture because acupuncture is based on some mysterious thing called qi, and they're like totally misinterpreting the history of acupuncture for their own kind of marketing campaign. So I understand why it's confusing for people.
Yeah. So make sure again that you're going to a licensed acupuncturist. I think that that's super important because I've never had acupuncture done, but I've seen it on TV. So now I'm an expert. No, I'm just kidding. But I've seen like images of people with needles all over their face. Is
Mhm.
that is that what you would expect from a traditional acupuncture session, or would it look different than that?
Well, it really depends. And what people may not know too, depending on where you're located, if you're in, a smaller city or a smaller town, then you may just have the choice of like one or two acupuncturists, and they would probably be more likely to be more of like a generalist. But if you're in a bigger city, where there are more acupuncturists, there are specialties. So some acupuncturists specialize in sports medicine and pain relief, and they work with like people who run the New York City Marathon, and those you might see more needles because if uh, if you're an athlete, you have more pain throughout the body, but you also have more stamina to kind of handle that number of needles and for releasing muscle knots all at one time. And then there's also facial acupuncturists who, for people looking for an alternative to Botox, facial acupuncture is fantastic. It's a natural look as opposed to that frozen look, and it actually does the needle stimulate collagen production, so you'll end up again. It's like prompting your body to heal itself in a healthy, gentle way. But for facial acupuncture, sometimes we will use a lot of needles depending on, you can put a needle into someone's wrinkle to stimulate collagen production. So depending on the person, I like to use fewer needles because it is a lot for the body to process. But for someone who is used to it or can maybe has just says like go for it. Like people react differently. Some people are more sensitive to the needles than others. It depends too, like if a woman is having her period, she'll be more sensitive to pain. So you might use a fewer needles certain times of the month for the patient. And then there are all types of schools of acupuncture. So you can treat people just through the ear, because there's like a microsystem of points that treats the entire body. So there are community acupuncture clinics that you could go to where you're sitting in a chair, fully clothed, and an acupuncturist is just treating your ear and maybe your hands and feet. And that can give great results also. Trying to think, oh, they're like fertility specialists. So that's a big, that's a great area where there's more growing integration because there are studies that show IVF treatments get statistically better results when the patient is receiving acupuncture as well. So fertility doctors are starting to integrate a little bit more and refer people to acupuncture specialists. So I would say, if you're looking for an acupuncturist, if you have the options to call around in your town, it's okay to reach out to an acupuncturist and ask questions like, or go to their website and see if they specialize in something in particular. So if someone came to me, I have extra training in facial acupuncture, and my main focus is emotional issues, as I mentioned. So I can help with, like I've helped runners with knee pain, but if it's something a little more involved, I usually refer out because I'm like, this isn't what, like what I love doing day in and out, and it's not what I do all the time. And there are people they're acupuncturists who absolutely love doing this and have their special protocols, and feel free to kind of shop around on people's websites and look at their bios, see what their training was, see what their kind of philosophy is, because there are some acupuncturists now who have a lot of training in functional medicine. They can they can look at your lab reports, and they combine their Eastern medicine training with some Western medicine extra training to help you, make sense of the full picture of your health. There are some acupuncturists who have a lot of extra training in herbal medicine, so they can, prescribe, they can work with you for like very individualized formulas for like menopause relief or, there's an acupuncturist I know who specializes in Lyme disease and helping people. So you can integrate acupuncture to physically feel better, but then also go home with this herbal formula that will help, it's like antiviral, anti-Lyme, or herbs. So there's a growing range of options when you're looking for the right acupuncturist.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. And I know you touched a little bit on access to acupuncturists.
Mm-hmm.
I live in an area, I don't believe that there is any acupuncture within a, at least 30-mile radius to my home. Do you find that there are areas where there's significant lack in accessibility, and how do we make accessibility better?
That's a tricky challenge. There's definitely a super concentration in the big metropolitan areas, partly because that's where the schools are, and that's, partly just because it's bigger population centers. I think we're kind of at like a pivotal moment where acupuncture has been in the United States since the 1970s. So even like the first generation of acupuncturists are now starting to retire, pass the baton from all they've learned, and it's getting more and more recognized by the federal government and Western medicine as like part of the solution to the opioid crisis. So I think we're hopefully going to see more, like right now, I think Medicare just opened up some reimbursement for acupuncture for back pain, but it's like this labyrinth process of approval and legislation where I think they just made it allowable to get Medicare reimbursement for acupuncture, but they haven't allowed acupuncturists into the Medicare system yet. So like functionally you can't you can't really get reimbursed because it's this whole it seems like a long process, and there's some national organizations kind of working with legislators to figure things out. So hopefully that will start to improve access for people, as right now it is like a very mixed bag of what kind of insurance coverage you can get. And I personally don't take insurance because it would be too expensive for me to, like, you have to hire someone to do just insurance billing to figure out the ins and outs of all the different insurers. But bigger acupuncturists are able to kind of manage that. And now I think for people who have like those health savings accounts that you can use to buy like over-the-counter medication and eyeglasses and stuff like that, I think they're starting to open up to that you can use some of those funds if you go see an acupuncturist. So it's starting to change, but depending on your state, you probably always have to call ahead to someone to say, do you accept acupuncture? What if you do accept, do you accept insurance? If you do accept insurance, do you know what's covered, or should I call my insurance company? Because sometimes they'll only cover, like back pain, insomnia, migraines. Like they might just have a very specific list of what they'll reimburse you for. So we're still at an awkward stage. In terms of access, I think the more people express an interest in acupuncture, the more acupuncturists will feel safer about moving out of big cities and moving into smaller areas. Because right now, one of the challenges as an acupuncturist, I think statistically, like less than 2% of Americans have ever had acupuncture. If you go to like New York, it might be like maybe 30% of New Yorkers have tried acupuncture at one point or another because it's more available, and also just people are more aware of it, and doctors are more aware of it, and doctors are more ready to refer out to acupuncturists. Like acupuncturists have the challenge of maybe they want to move back to their hometown, but they don't know that the town is ready and interested to support their small business. So it's I think it's going to still be a gradual process. So it is great when people start to express more interest. And some, I am in, like Facebook groups with acupuncturists where we kind of compare notes, and there is a lot of acupuncturists do want to leave big cities and either, like semi-retire to quieter places or have a family in a more affordable location. But there is this fear that if they move to a different part of the country where they're the first acupuncturist in town, it's a big learning curve for them and for the town. So I think it's going to be like a slow, gradual rollout.
I can definitely understand that. And I can understand hesitancy with getting needles put in anywhere in your body, even though they're small needles. I can understand hesitancy with that.
Uh-huh.
But at the same time, I think that any modality that helps a person feel better, regardless of what it is a good thing. And I think everyone should be able to access it. As far as an average cost for an acupuncture session, if insurance doesn't cover it, can you give me like a ballpark on what that would be?
That really depends on where you are. I think it can go any, if you're going to like a community acupuncture clinic where I said like you may be seated in a chair, and sometimes it's like an open room just with like curtains between people, so it's less privacy. that, some community models may start, like they may have like a sliding scale where maybe it's like $20 to $40, depending on what your resources are. Or sometimes clinics will have like one day a month where they have, lower rates or community rates, or they may go to health fairs or something and give sessions at a reduced rate that way. But from like community up to a regular acupuncture session where you're seeing someone one-on-one, you're in a private room for, up to an hour. That's the other thing that people may not understand. You're so used to going into your Western doctor and they see you for maybe 5-10 minutes. Most of the time you're seeing the physician's assistant or a nurse. With most acupuncturists, it's much more one-on-one time. We talk to you a lot more. When I take on a new patient, the first session is 90 minutes because I want to spend a good half hour talking to them about their health history, looking for their patterns, seeing what might be the root cause of whatever's going on, getting a sense of what their health goals are and what we should focus on first if a lot of things are going on. So it's a very different model than a doctor who sees tons and tons of people throughout the day. And then oftentimes you'll be lying on the treatment table for like a good 25 to 30 minutes with the needles in you, just relaxing, kind of falling half asleep. So it's more of a time investment on both sides, on your side as a patient and also on the acupuncturist side. So I would say maybe an average across the country might range anywhere from like 65 to 100 per session. In New York and Los Angeles, any of the big cities, it's going to be more expensive because rent is more expensive, cost of living is more expensive. And the more specialized you get, the more expensive as well. Like some fertility specialists charge more because sometimes they are even on call and will work weekends if you're getting, like an IVF treatment. And some of those acupuncturists are on call to see you the day before or the day of the treatment to help things go smoothly. And then facial acupuncturists, I think, would tend to be the most expensive because that's, if you just look at what Botox costs, facial acupuncture is less expensive, but it's still more of a premium service and a specialized market. So it really, really depends from city to city and place to place and specialty.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. It's interesting to understand the cost of this because like you said before, not every insurance company can pay for it. Not everyone has access, but it's good to know that there are clinics that go by a sliding scale and because I would personally think that it would be out of reach for me in
Mm-hmm.
my circumstances, but now knowing that there's clinics that I could possibly find, maybe I have to drive to Providence or something for one, but knowing that they might go by a sliding scale, that might be an attainable solution for a caregiver like me.
Definitely.
Um,
And the other thing to look out for too is if you're looking for lower cost options too, a great option is if there happens to be an acupuncture school within your vicinity. I'm trying to think, like in the Midwest, I believe there's one in Chicago. I'm not sure if there's one in Wisconsin. You can check because if a city is big enough, it's possible they have an acupuncture school. And if that's the case, then they'll have a student clinic where the rates there tend to be the lowest, sometimes even like $30. But you can know that you'll be treated by a student and you're helping the student get practice because, like I said, you need many, 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 many hours in the student clinic before they'll let you graduate. So you'll be helping a student, but also the supervisor and professor is fully authorizing whatever the student does. So it's not like you're not getting lower quality care. You're getting care from someone who's learning and is a little less experienced, but they're being supervised. So that's another option for people who live near an acupuncture school. It's a win-win for both the students and for you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. So I have another question. We talked a little bit about distance acupuncture. How is that possible?
Okay, so it's not acupuncture itself is the needles, but there's acupressure. I guide people in working with acupressure points. You can massage yourself. You can do, pressure points, and then I like to work with different things like essential oils on points. I use something called flower essences that is a little bit similar to essential oils, but gentler. You can. I teach people how to. People may not have heard the term gua sha or cupping, um, but they may have seen it like on Instagram because they've gotten trendier over the years. Cupping is something that you can go to an acupuncturist for, but they also now sell kits that because it came from more of like a folk tradition where like your grandmother might give you cupping if you were coming down with a cold or flu. So it's something that it's good to have some training with, but people have access to kind of do it at home, do some of the stuff at home. And there's something called gua sha that can be done with just a regular spoon from the kitchen, but now they also sell beautiful gua sha tools that are made of jade or other crystals, or sometimes they're made of stainless steel, and they're in all different shapes. But those are meant. There's facial gua sha that if you're putting on, like a serum or moisturizer at night, they're facial rollers that people may have seen that have become very popular. Facial roller is nice, and it feels good. Gua sha is a little bit more powerful than the facial roller, and there are techniques that you can do to kind of help lymphatic drainage, do acupressure points, help smooth wrinkles, and increase blood flow to your face. And so there are different techniques that kind of come out of Chinese medicine that you can teach over Zoom to help people take care of themselves in a better way.
Awesome. Thank you for that. I'm familiar with the facial rollers. I actually keep one in my refrigerator and
Mm.
it's really good for headaches.
Yeah.
It's so like even if without moisturizer, like
Mhm.
just rolling a headache away kind of.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I just
If you combine, like if you're prone to migraines or something and you have um, a gua sha tool or a roller, and then maybe you work with someone to pick a couple essential oils, like peppermint can be good for headaches. Just put the diluted essential oil on a couple acupressure points. I like to do, like there's you can do some Qigong. Qigong, it basically translates as like cultivation of energy. So it's this, if people have ever gone to a park and seen people kind of moving in slow motion, in big cities, like whenever there's a Chinatown, you'll see big groups of people doing it. It's great as you get older too, because it's a great way to help you keep your sense of balance. So it's a great way to kind of protect falling as you get older and more prone to that type of thing. So qigong, there are like whole different schools of qigong. I like to just pull a few simple techniques that people can remember. So there are different techniques where you can, do kind of light massage or pressure holds on different points, working with like some of the qigong meditation techniques. So yeah, there's so much you can do for yourself rather than just reach for. You can still reach for a Tylenol, but if the Tylenol's not working or you don't want to reach for the Tylenol first, there are other ways you can help yourself.
well, thank you so much for that. I have heard of Qigong before. It's
Hmm.
something that's mentioned in some of my Reiki. They've talked about it a little bit with that. So there is a little bit of a familiarness to it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the Reiki is that universal energy, and Chi is that it's same thing, different names. So that is within you. So it's yours to work with and play with if
I,
do some exercises to kind of connect with it.
absolutely. How do you integrate sound healing in acupuncture, if you don't mind me asking?
Sure. I love talking about sound healing. There are a few different ways. There's actually a qigong tradition from hundreds, if not more, years ago. It's called the Six Healing Sounds, and so in Chinese medicine, each organ system is associated not just with physical symptoms, but also some emotions. If you think about like how, the heart, you tend to feel certain emotions in the heart more, and maybe you feel other emotions in your gut more. So part of Chinese medicine is kind of working on mind, body, spirit level. So in this qigong practice, there are specific sounds that kind of resonate more with different organ systems and different emotions. So I'll lead people through different breathing techniques using these sounds. That's a way that they can kind of work to release some emotions themselves. And then when I'm working one-on-one with someone in front of me, I use tuning forks that have weights on them so that the sound doesn't go out into the ear where you hear it. It goes down through the tip of the fork. And I'm trained in a system called Accutonics that puts different sound vibrations on different acupuncture points. And that it feels great. For people who are afraid of needles, I do offer a session where if they don't want needles, they can just have sound. Um, or the sound is a great way to relax you before the needles, because it just feels really calming and soothing, and it helps the nervous system relax even before we get into like the rest of the treatment. And then I do sessions too where I'll put a singing bowl on someone, because it's amazing when you feel we're very conductive of sound because we're mostly water and bone. So sound actually travels faster through us, through our bodies, than it does through the air. So excuse me, you feel it very quickly. And when you're hearing the sound as well, I do guided meditations using singing bowls and other instruments, because meditation itself is challenging for most people, and it doesn't have to be. You don't have to sit in silence trying to turn off your brain. That's that's a misconception. When you work with sound, it just becomes natural for your brain waves to switch into a more relaxed state, that state almost between like sleeping and waking, where you're kind of like half awake or almost in a dream state. You kind of feel very connected to your subconscious. So I use sound in different ways, both in person and virtually. I do a virtual sound bath that has a guided meditation. That's, the sound quality isn't the greatest through Zoom compared to what you get in person, but people have noticed that it is helpful to kind of de-stress and shift out of an anxious mode into more relaxed and ready for sleep.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. Sound healing is actually a big passion of mine actually. Also I have the singing bowl. I've been taking a class,
Mhm.
an online class on sound healing, and we play binaural beats for my kids
Mhm.
to help
Yeah.
relax them and ourselves. So it's another technique, and I think like binaural beats are very easily accessible if you
Mhm.
can't afford to go to a sound bath,
Uh-huh.
or if there isn't one near you. There are some people who live in areas where there is not. I'm
Mhm.
fortunate there's a place not far from my house that offers it's like a crystal shop, and they offer like
Mhm.
sound healing and things like that, which is really
Nice.
exciting and cool.
Yeah.
but I
Um,
know,
yeah, there's so much on YouTube now, and if you
yeah,
have a set of headphones, you can get the binaural effect through that. But even if you don't have headphones, just try closing your eyes, lying
yeah,
down, and just listening to whatever singing bowl recording on YouTube calls to you,
yeah.
and see if you notice a shift.
Yeah, no, exactly. We love the singing bowls. A lot of times at night, that's what we put on to sleep,
Mm,
and we'll put it on for the kids and stuff. My youngest son, I have my singing bowl in the other room, and he'll go and he'll grab it, and I let him use it. And he can feel the vibration, and he loves that,
mhm,
like that feeling of like, and you can feel it when you use one, especially because I have like a small one that fits in my hand. You can feel the vibration of the sound. It's very calming, and you're focusing on that repetitive motion, the sound. It's
mhm.
relaxing,
Right.
calming.
Yeah.
I love my singing bowl.
Yeah. And too, if you have any sort of area of pain too, if you're lucky enough to have a singing bowl and say you're having like menstrual cramps, put the bowl on your belly and strike it a few times because like the tuning forks that I work with, they've done studies from a Western perspective that when the sound vibration goes through the acupuncture point, it releases nitric oxide immediately, which is a vasodilator. So you're increasing blood flow, you're relaxing the muscles in the area. It's like they're actual tangible physical effects. It's not, it does feel good just on a kind of emotional level or relaxing level, but you're actually helping yourself. Like if you have a, achy lower back, try putting the singing bowl on it and um, let that just kind of calm the area down a little bit.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. It's, I think that access to these types of healing modalities is so important. I truly do. And I see so much, again, back to the before I ask you the second to last question, there's so much back and forth on this type of medicine is better than that type. And the fact of the matter is anything that's going to calm you down and help you feel better while you're going through your treatments of if you need chemo or radiation, being relaxed before that heavy
Mm-hmm.
treatment, you're going to have a better outcome. And
Yeah.
I agree with you that we need to do more combinations of these treatments, and we need to make sure that they're accessible for more families and more caregivers and more people who need the care because
Mm-hmm.
I know I'm at least 30 miles away from the nearest acupuncturist from where I live, which is and I'm in the East Coast, but I'm just not
Mm-hmm.
near anybody. But I also know too that there's people in other parts of the country who have almost no access other than through virtual sessions or YouTube to any kind of like holistic type healing or natural healing. I even know people in the Bible Belt who there's no Reiki practitioners there. They wouldn't even be safe to be one there. Or even acupuncture or anything, even though there's clinical proof and there's no harm done, there's still so much stigma to it. And we have to release that stigma. We have to accept all methods of healing and making people feel better.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I'm so thrilled to have you on to talk about this stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, thank you for spreading the word too, because it is like a huge education curve. I mean, if you grow up in Asia, this is, your regular medicine, and it's no big deal. But here, there's this layer of mystery on it, or misconceptions, or, and a lot of people do have a needle phobia, but it really can help so much. And it's not a cure all, but I had one of my aunts had she's had knee replacement surgery, hip replacement surgery, she's had everything by this point with a long history of arthritis. And she this was even before I was in acupuncture school. She was open-minded enough years and years ago to give it a try. And she actually went to a student clinic, a place where I ended up studying. And she said, acupuncture was able to, it didn't take her pain down to zero, but it took her down to the point where she didn't need the heavy duty painkillers that they had prescribed her. And she could even wean off, like the Tylenol. That it got her to a place where it wasn't perfect because, maybe not everything's 100% fixable, if depending on the situation. Or as you said, like someone with cancer, go to chemo, but then you can see an acupuncturist for your nausea and your exhaustion and your anxiety, and they combine really well to, there's, unfortunately, I think most people think they have to like suffer through things. But you don't even, people think like menstrual cramps are normal, and they're really not. You can see an acupuncturist for PMS, and for something like that, you usually have to go for a few months because you need to like go through a few menstrual cycles to really regulate it. But if people are willing to give it a try, it's very safe. The one thing I'd say for people giving it a try, if you just are going to try it one time only, that's not really a fair way to judge. If you want to try it once to experience it, that's okay. Think about like you wouldn't take one antibiotic pill and leave the rest of the bottle and say, oh, that didn't work. For acupuncture, it's very gentle, it's cumulative, so it like builds over time. So when you talk to an acupuncturist, you can ask them like, how many sessions do you think this I might need for this condition? Because if you've had something for 20 years, you might need to come for a few months or more to really unravel that and get to the root. If you've only, if you just like sprained your ankle, you may just need to go for, 2 or 3 weeks, and then the pain's gone and it's resolved. So it really varies widely, but I just ask people to like give it a fair chance when they do try it.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And I just have one more question before we get to our wrap-up questions. Is there anybody who maybe acupuncture wouldn't be good for?
There may be, contraindications for particular conditions. When most acupuncturists do like a very extensive health intake, so we would know like if you were on blood thinning medication, you might be more prone to bruising, and in that case, we might use fewer needles, or we might use different needle placements rather than other places. For facial acupuncture, there are contraindications where if you've had Botox or plastic surgery or some other extensive facial work, we don't want to work with that until it's fully healed or until the Botox is dissipated. So an acupuncturist might tell you, like come back in 3 months or 6 months after the surgery or something like that. I don't think there's, it's really like so specific to different conditions or different things that people are looking for. And then, depending, don't go to an acupuncturist. If you have like serious mental health issues, if you're having like an acute mental health state, an acupuncturist would likely say this isn't right for you in this moment. Let me refer you out to an emergency clinic. So, depending on the situation, it might not be, or, sometimes even a patient might come in and say they're having, because some people are so afraid of Western medicine, and they do want to do everything natural. But, sometimes an acupuncturist might say, no, actually, if you're telling me you're having chest pain, I want you, I want you to get that checked out. Let me call an ambulance. Like acupuncture can help you with your blood pressure after we know that everything's okay. But it's not, if it's for like an emergency setting, even like if I were having an emergency, I might do a couple needles on myself, but I would be calling 911. Like, there. So that's the main instance I think where that's like the biggest precaution of, if you really think you're having an emergency, go to a Western doctor first, and then you can talk to an acupuncturist about pain relief or, help sleeping or, ways to support yourself. But it's, if you're bleeding from a car accident, we'll help your whiplash after everything's like after you've had all the scans and everything.
Yeah. No, completely understandable. And I'd also imagine it might not be appropriate for a lot of my audience has, is caregivers for people who are on the autism spectrum who maybe, not cognitively able to sit down or understand what's going on, or dementia, who again are not cognitively, don't have that cognitive awareness of
Mhm.
someone, you're not going to stick a needle in a dementia patient's face and
Yeah,
get a good result.
right.
You
And
know,
there are acupuncturists who specialize in treating children, but with children, usually there's a little like acupressure device. Like for young children, you generally don't use needles at all. You use this, it's like a little, almost like a ballpoint pen in similar idea. You use this acupressure device on the points, and children actually are so their energy is so much more to the surface than adults are. Adults are low in energy. They need the needles in longer. But with kids and also animals, because they're vets who specialize when working with animals, you generally, if you're using needles at all, it's retained for maybe 10-15 minutes as opposed to a half hour, and someone's always in the room to make sure they're not pulling them out or anything. So if you are curious about options for your child, you could and there's some acupuncturists who do virtual consults, because there are these patches that you can put on acupuncture points that have, it's complicated to explain. They've got like crystals inside them that kind of beam infrared heat, like reflect infrared heat back to the body and send signals. Um, so it's an area I'm just starting to learn more about, but there's a company that sells a different range of patches, and they would work for someone with dementia or for younger kids or people who were too needle sensitive. So you could give those a try also.
oh, awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. I appreciate all of that. And I'm just going to ask you again, what is your favorite self-care technique?
Well, it's hard to pick a favorite. they're they're all handy. It depends on the moment. And if I were being like if like from a non-clinical perspective, probably the self-care I reach to first is petting my dog or cat for instant stress relief. So that's always recommended. But one thing I'll give people that I use myself, and it's super handy because it's not hard to remember. Very, very simple way to start to relax your nervous system is to just make your exhale longer than your inhale. You don't need to get hung up with counting or anything complicated. Just the very fact of a longer exhale, so it's like you're sighing, that signals to the vagus nerve, which controls the heart rate and breathing and a bunch of other things, that signals to the nervous system that, oh, I guess we're not being chased by a tiger now, where it's safe to relax. So taking, you can do it once, but 3 is a nice number. It's just like 3 long, deep breaths where if you want to inhale through your nose and just exhale through your mouth, just being aware that you like drawing it out, luxuriating in the release of air, so that that will help you shift into a more relaxed state. And then if you can, there are lots of ways you can have fun with that in terms of like sound healing. Humming is very powerful to calm the nervous system as well, and it's creating your own sound vibration. So if you want to hum on the exhale, that's one of the reasons people feel so good singing too, is because that naturally makes your exhales longer. Those are tools I use probably every day. Is just, it feels so good to sing, and it feels good to release a big sigh. And if you're feeling a certain emotion, Like one of the sounds I mentioned from the qigong healing sounds, the sound associated with irritation and frustration and anger is shh. So if you just picture an angry librarian and just picture like releasing whatever pocket of anger or frustration is inside, just let the air carry some of that out. You can picture a gray cloud, and then when you inhale white light or golden light. And that's simple and easy to remember and very intuitive, but it really helps.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. I think that those are great techniques. Breathing is a great technique, and having a pets are really great stress relievers. So I can agree with both of those. Where can my audience find you for more information?
My website is joyalchemyhealing.com. On Instagram, I'm at Acupuncture Annie. So I post some videos there, and they can always feel free to email me at joyalchemyacupuncture@gmail.com.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for coming back and being here again. It was so great chatting with you. I learned so much about acupuncture today, and I'm excited to share this episode.
Thanks. It was so good talking to you, and thank you for spreading the word about the wonders of acupuncture.
No, thank you again. And to my audience, if you liked what you heard on this episode, or if you're interested in more, again, reach out to Annie. Her information will all be in the show notes. If you liked this episode and you know somebody who needs to hear this, there's any information, please like, share, and subscribe our podcast, but definitely share it with a friend. There's so many people who might want this information or that could benefit from this information. So please share it with them. If you want to support our podcast, you could do so by using our link to Buy Me a Coffee or Ko-Fi. You could donate to help support, but even more so, again, like, share, and subscribe. It costs you nothing, and it helps us out a ton. And with that, I will see you next week.